Hey guys, welcome back to Sierra Rose Typology. I've got something very special for you, of course. We are going to look at Theodore Ted Kaczynski, get into his type, a very interesting individual and possibly ahead of his time, a product of rejection, especially social rejection, abuse, even torture, and isolation. An inability to connect with people that drove him to the edge and led him to a place of, well, I guess extreme political views and this retaliatory anger on society that, I mean, if you know his story, you might think it could be justified, or you can at least understand how he got there. But anyways, if you are interested in being typed by myself, either in cognitive functions or the enneagram, you can just drop a comment below or hit me up on Instagram. I'll try to remember to include a link to where you can directly contact me if you would like to get a typing. But anyways, this is him. And, if you're looking at visual typing, I would guess just from the pictures that he's in that 6'5" space, 5'6", because like here he's got like this cagey quality. He looks obviously withdrawn, and that's points for like core 5/6. So like the 6'5" space, it can have this obviously heady, cagey, withdrawn look. And very, I think, stoic, especially in his case. I haven't looked at his type in cognitive type, but I would assume he was probably an alpha, like with his eyes. Like right here, you can see there's like a pronounced laxity in his orbital area. That's like the muscular tension on the face, giving him kind of that sloping here that's associated with SI or just the suspended axis being NESI. So this right here would be like SSS eye tension. So he's got like taut pretarsals or eyelids. They're wide open. And then a lot of laxity here in his perceptual area and just overall laxity, which leads to that drooping effect with time. I think he was probably an alpha. Maybe double intro. He could have possibly been an FESI. But I mean, given his level of how like socially introverted he was, he also might have been an SI lead. And I've noticed a lot of SI leads getting very into politics. So he could have been like an SI, FE, just double introverted development. So like SI and TI. And that would also contribute to his very like exacting, precise style, and also his definite focus on like worldview. So in CT, we have PI as the worldview function. So from a very early age, PI leads, that would be NI or SI in this instance, they have this focus on building their worldview. So like they're using that perceiving function because PI is perceiving to build this worldview to help them navigate the world. And you very much see it with him. It's a lot of focus and more of a dark twist in his life, obviously. But yeah, right here, I think this is what I'm talking about. He looks very guarded and cagey. Like he's on alert, right? And there's one video I found where it's not like a video interview. It's just recorded audio from when he was in prison, but we will listen to him in his own words. But first I want to get into the trauma that shaped him. And first of all, according to his family, he was kind of like a neurotypical baby, happy and responsive. And then he developed an allergic reaction, like hives or something, at 9 months old and had to be hospitalized and separated from his mother. And she said that after that, his personality changed significantly. He became very withdrawn and also clingy. So kind of like this insecure attachment thing. And I think that probably is what started this downfall into isolation and perhaps madness. But the video I wanted to check out first was this one so we can get just a little bit of background from someone who's looked at his life.
It's a very interesting case because evidently he was a pretty well-adapted kid in elementary school and actually was considered to be something of a leader. And then somebody got the bright idea that he should take an IQ test. He did and got an IQ score of 167. You have to have 140 to be defined as a genius. So what's 167? That's 1 out of a million people.
It was recommended by the school that he skip a grade when he was only 10 years old, so to skip from 5th to 7th grade. The problem with it is he was with older kids that he didn't know. He became more and more socially isolated. David.
This woman looks a little bit like Nicole Kidman. But anyways, he was a handsome kid. Like, I think most people would say that's pretty classically handsome. So like he did have a lot going for him. He's handsome. I believe he was from a loving family. He was obviously like freakishly intelligent.
Isolated. David, his younger brother, reports that at one point Kaczynski was being very mean to him. And Ted says, well, sometimes geniuses can be sadistic. He was acknowledging that as a genius, he could be bad, sadistic, and he could work that genius for evil.
Ted Kaczynski graduated from Harvard in 1962 at the age of 20. He then pursued his PhD at the University of Michigan, where he did.
I don't know if you caught that, but he graduated from Harvard with his bachelor's at the age of 20, which is pretty insane. He graduated from high school at 15. And I believe at the time he was the youngest person ever to be accepted on full scholarship into Harvard, which was a very big deal.
Did groundbreaking work in the field of mathematics.
One of the hallmarks of his intelligence was in the late 60s. He won an award for his dissertation, in fact, his PhD in mathematics at Ann Arbor in Michigan, because he solved a theorem that had been thought unsolvable for decades by mathematicians. He solved it and published it.
From Michigan, then, he went to Berkeley to teach mathematics. He was the youngest assistant professor that the mathematics department had ever had. But the students hated him, absolutely loathed him, didn't have any class hours, he wouldn't talk to them. I mean, he was very disdainful of everybody.
Okay, so this to me, what's jumping out is at least double competency. Spoiler alert, I do think that he is a flatliner. I think he's in the 593 space. So he would be highly motivated. And I also think that's reflected in his political ideology, like this focus on rugged individualism. And also, I have noticed anecdotally, flatliners, especially like the really five heavy ones, the 5-wing-6 space, they tend to be drawn to political anarchism, which is really coming from a place of like rejection versus attachment. Like fives, because they are, I don't know if this is necessarily proper terminology, but it's like isolation in head. And they are inherently separate from the collective, and almost, especially if they're SoSp, they're standing outside, very critical of kind of what the little ants are doing, the plebs. And there's a lot of frustration, and 5 is not technically a frustration type, but obviously this guy had a lot of frustration, a lot of criticisms with society that drove him to do what he did.
His genius was in everything but social commerce with other people. He wasn't able to negotiate the social world with other people. And so he grew convinced that he had to get away from people, away from society.
In 1960.
So again, there's more rejection. 5 is a rejection type. And you're going to just see that as a recurring theme through his life. Not only was he the recipient of a lot of really painful rejection, but he was, in essence, rejecting society and rejecting everyone that had hurt him.
1969, Kaczynski suddenly and unexpectedly resigned from his position at Berkeley. He then withdrew from society by moving to Lincoln, Montana, where he lived in a small cabin that did not have running water or electricity.
The cabin was just this rustic place off the grid, 8 by 12 feet. That was his getting off the grid and getting so far away from civilization, everything.
He was very happy when he first moved to the woods. He wrote rapturously about it, about how beautiful it was. But then,
Okay, a little anecdotal side note here. There is this strong theme with people who are nines or nine fixed of being drawn to the woods. It's such a thing. Like, I'm a nine. I love going into the woods and just feeling at peace. Nine is a withdrawn type. Nine is very amorphous, and we struggle with boundaries, so we can get overwhelmed with just like modernity in general. So it makes sense to me that he would retreat from that core place of five and rejection, retreat to the woods when he had really tried so hard. I think in multiple places throughout his life, he did try to connect with people, but he just wasn't able to. He wasn't able to form a lasting relationship with a woman. I believe he died a virgin. And there's a lot of overlap, especially in like more classic literature, between Enneagram 5 and like schizoid traits. And he definitely had schizoid traits. And I believe he was diagnosed with schizophrenia while he was in prison. And he was dogmatic that he didn't want to do the insanity plea. He actually had a real fear of losing his mind, which I think is definitely like, I mean, no one wants to lose their mind, but especially like a genius five wing six. At one point, he was going to commit suicide by strangling himself with his own underwear, and he created a tourniquet. A little bit dark here, but when he started to feel lightheaded and dizzy, he pulled the plug because he was overcome with this crippling fear of what if I survive, but I've survived with brain damage. So, yeah, I mean, head type, very bright. Not every five is a genius, yes, but we do see an inordinate amount of fives who are like super, super big brain. And he had worked very hard. He had his doctorate. By age 25, he was the youngest professor at the school, but he was unable to connect with his students. He didn't have that human warmth. And so with someone with a lot of competency in their type, especially like five with three, they can have like this robotic quality to them. And maybe he couldn't handle more rejection. So he just abruptly quit and he's like, I'm done. I'm done with society. I'm moving to the woods. I think that's competency plus the double withdrawn. Like, I'm not going to be accepted here. So I'm going to go live on my own terms where no one can reject me anymore.
when planes started flying overhead, he noticed motorcyclists riding through the forest and disturbing the nature that he was glorying in. It turned to bitter hatred of the technological society. He viewed technology as evil, as the evolution of technology as evil, and the technical class as perverting the human spirit.
What he discovers is he can't get away from society even there. The society that he's trying to escape is closing in on him anyway, and there's nothing he can do about it. So he strikes back.
He had taught himself bomb making. He ended up creating chemical mixes, melting his own components and casting them and putting them into the devices.
So I think that this is interesting too, and also speaks to core five that a lot of people who maybe a six who feels like they're on the fringes of society, they're outcasts, they might join other like reactionary extreme groups. And collaborate on how are we going to fight society or like affect change. This guy was a completely one-man show. He taught himself how to do bombs. He was doing this all on his own accord. I don't believe, no, this is why, and another reason why it was so hard for the FBI to find him. He was doing this for at least 17 years, and the only reason he was caught was because his brother recognized his writing style in the manifesto.
Is carving wood to make specific trigger switches. He was a brilliant criminal in that he was able to expertly exclude anything identifying himself, any hairs, any fibers, any fingerprints. He was unlike any bomber that we had seen before.
Okay, so yeah, not only that, he didn't give them any like DNA evidence, no fingerprints, nothing, but he was planting false evidence in the bombs to throw the FBI off of his trail. So like kind of playing into that whole like 5-wing-6 SOSP mastermind thing.
In 1978, Kaczynski carried out his first attack by mailing a parcel containing a homemade bomb to Northwestern University. It was the beginning of a reign of terror during which he carried out a total of 16 bombings over the course of nearly 2 decades. For Kaczynski, these attacks were not random killings, but rather targeted strikes against the institutions he believed represented technological society.
His purpose was to wake people up to the dangers of technology. He would not have been able to promote his views if he had not gotten the attention of the media and the government.
Okay, again, so I've got a couple points here, and I had recorded a video on him with Larissa from Goblins of Discord. It hasn't been published. I don't know if it will be, but she was thinking 5-wing-4 for him. But I really see strongly 5-wing-6 because there is that element of attachment. Like he wasn't just retreating from society and isolating himself. Like 5-wing-4, that would be like a double dose of withdrawn. He still had this attachment, like he still wanted to impact society. He still felt this tie to society that hints at the 6-wing attachment and also SOSP. So like the bombings themselves, it was very calculated. It was just a means to an end to do what he thought was necessary to draw attention to his cause. He thought that technology, beginning with the Industrial Revolution, was going to weaken mankind until we were basically enslaved to technology, which, I mean, he might not have been wrong on. I mean, the guy had some good points, but yeah, so that's why another reason I'm seeing 5-wing-6.
Law enforcement by killing people with his bombs. That was his goal.
In 1995, Kaczynski wrote an anonymous 35,000-word anti-technology manifesto that he demanded to be published in major newspapers. Ironically,
Yeah, that's definitely like the SO instinct, and I think specifically SOSP.
it was a decision that would lead to his undoing.
Ted's brother, David, had read the manifesto, and phrases jumped out at David right away, and he had to try to push them down. That can't be, it can't be. There were phrases that appeared in the manifesto that were unusual, spellings that appeared that were unusual, and David recognized him. The upshot was that finally David and his wife went to an attorney in D.C. and said, "We'd like to approach the FBI."
On April 3rd, 1996, FBI agents finally arrested Kaczynski at his Montana cabin.
Okay, so yeah, that's interesting, and I think that probably says something about his type structure, that he had like a one-track mind, like 5 as a fear type with their orientation, they're kind of like just burrowing into the same, going deeper and deeper into like whatever they're into, whether it's mathematics, which was the case for him when he was younger, or his unique philosophy, ideology. And it has such a distinct flavor that was uniquely him, which is definitely a 5 thing. 5s have to do it their own way, right? So his brother was able to recognize that, yes, this is absolutely my brother. This could only be one person in the whole world, right? So speaking of his brother, we're going to check this one out.
Convicted of terrorizing the country with bombs, is reaching out to tell his story. Ted Kaczynski, known as the Unabomber, apparently sent a handwritten letter to at least one journalist. In it, he says he wants to speak about his mental health. His attacks killed 3 people and injured 24 others. Kaczynski was captured in 1996. Anna Werner has been covering the Unabomber case for years. Anna, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. The letter addressed to New Yorker writer Lawrence Wright has likely been sent to several other journalists. In it, Ted Kaczynski attacks his brother, who helped authorities end the bombing spree. Kaczynski once again stands by his belief that he is not crazy. In a handwritten letter, Ted Kaczynski, otherwise known as the Unabomber, writes, "I am ready to speak to someone from the media regarding my brother's recent comments and how they are being used to torment me." Kaczynski listed his preconditions for granting an interview, including tell me who you are, why I should trust you, and affirm that you understand that I am not mentally ill.
Okay, so again, I think that speaks to like the caginess in the 5-6 space, and he did have traits of paranoid personality disorder, which kind of fits with that whole like kind of like schizotypal space. And there is a little bit of confusion of like what actually was going on with this guy because there's some controversy about the way he was diagnosed. And I'm not going to try to like weigh in too much. That's not my area of expertise. But I think mostly he's the result of his extreme and unusual circumstances in combination with his type structure. Like if, say like he hadn't been hospitalized as a baby, he hadn't been identified as a super genius so early on. And then when he was, bumped ahead to grades, he was small, he was already socially awkward, he was relentlessly teased. And then he goes to Harvard, right? This really illustrious moment, something to be proud of, and gets recruited to this early iteration of the MK Ultra mind experiment, mind fuckery thing that happens to him. And this guy, what was his name? I don't remember, but the guy leading up the study presented himself to Ted as this caring parental figure, like trying to take him under his wing, gained his trust, and then basically psychologically tortured him for at least 200 hours of study time, where he was really broken down because he was participating under the guise that we want you to write about your philosophy of the world. So him probably as an SI lead, a worldview type, a 5-wing-6 who is orienting himself to life in the head center and his specific thing. This would have been absolutely just cataclysmic for him. He's betrayed. He is humiliated. He is broken down in the extreme by this authority figure that he had trusted.
The FBI says an American Airlines 727 with 80 persons aboard landed safely today at Washington's Dulles International Airport after a small bomb exploded in a mail pouch in the cargo hold.
For nearly 2 decades, Kaczynski sent bombs through the mail, killing 3 people and injuring 24 more. He was captured in April 1996 and sentenced to 4 life terms. In the letter, Kaczynski refers to his brother David, who helped investigators identify him as the Unabomber. David has penned a new book detailing his brother's struggle with mental illness. In 2005, he spoke to CBS News Sunday Morning about why he tipped off law enforcement.
Clearly, he had to be stopped, and I don't think there was any other way to stop him. I sometimes think, maybe earlier in his life, he was my older brother. Maybe if I had recognized how seriously disturbed he was, I could have been more helpful to him.
Kaczynski has reached out from behind bars through handwritten letters before. Psychologist Dr. Stephen Diamond has studied Kaczynski's case.
It may very well be some kind of a repetition of his trying to be heard and gain some recognition.
We spoke with Lawrence Wright, the New Yorker writer who received the letter from Kaczynski. Wright tweeted out an image of the letter on Sunday with the caption, "The Unabomber reached out, saying, 'Thanks, Ted. You're not nuts at all.'" He described that as purely sarcastic and says he has zero interest in an interview. We also reached out to David Kaczynski, who has yet to respond. Nora?
All right, Hannah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too, that even behind bars and kind of like humiliated, really, again, he's still trying to get his message out. And it's like this sense of like, it's not about me, it's about the message. But I do think that he is probably obviously core 5 wing 6 with secondary 9 wing 8, because that would be double withdrawn. And so we can look at his cabin too. Like this guy, oh gosh. So and then SoSp, turning himself into like, well, feeling obviously this need to educate society, which is very SoSp, and also wanting to get his message out there. But we can also listen to this audio of him. But yeah, so I think again, more points for 6 wing on his 5, that he did make, and this makes it all the more sad to me. He made attempts to reach out a few times. I think he went on a date with a woman when he briefly was employed. And she found him, I think, like really robotic and off-putting. And then he was really hurt by it. But he was making attempts to connect in society and also get help, like a mental health help. And at one point, he must have been experiencing some gender dysphoria and had a consultation to get a sex, or to like at least start the process for a sex change. And while he was in the waiting room, he was hit with a bunch of anxiety and also rage towards this doctor. And I think this speaks to his inability to trust people who were in the mental health sphere or in positions of authority, because he had been so hurt and wounded. So he stormed out and it didn't happen. Just like an interesting little side note. So if he was like 5, which is already, it's just kind of like an eye on a stick, right? They're a brain in a body. So if he was 5, just kind of inherently disconnected from, his physical being, with a secondary 9 fix, which 9 is also, we're a body type, but we can also be pretty disconnected too. So that would be like a sense of like double withdrawn, double disconnected, and then you add all the trauma on top of that. And
very often we used to go out and play catch, or one of us would hit the ball with a bat, and the other one would catch it. And I remember one time when we were throwing that ball, we were as far apart as we could get and still reach each other with the ball. We were throwing that ball as hard as we could, as far as we could. Of course, the ball was thrown very inaccurately because we were trying so hard to throw it. And so we were making a run, leaping catches. We made more fantastic catches that day than I think we did in all the rest of our years together. That was more fun.
okay, so you definitely hear positivity there. Like, he's recalling a memory from childhood. It's like his vocal cadence, everything is very positive and up, which I think speaks to the positive influence of 9.
I don't know that it's exactly true that he wanted me to suffer exactly. It's more as if he wanted to score a victory over me, defeat me, put himself in the victorious position, and me in the position of the one who's defeated and humiliated.
Okay.
Okay, so again, very aware of like power dynamics and in the social realm, like SoSp, KG, paranoid, 5 wing 6, plus, mental health issues. Seeing his younger brother as competition. And this was like probably literally his only close relationship that he had.
Do you deny, in the context of this interview, Do you deny that you committed the crimes attributed to the Unabomber?
I can't comment on that.
Were you surprised when you learned that it was David who had turned you in? Were you surprised?
Not terribly surprised. I mean, see, I know a range of cells where there are 8 cells. And this they call this.
And I remember from when I was initially researching him that that wasn't true. That almost seems like rejection plus the positive reframing of 9. Because when he found out that his brother was the one who had turned him in, essentially, he was devastated and he refused to believe it for 2 or 3 days.
Celebrity role. And these people are not what you would think of as criminal types.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't seem to be very angry people.
Again, just kind of like hunky-dory, 9-wing 8. Like, these people really aren't that bad.
They're considerate of others. Some of them are quite intelligent.
Is it fair to say that your relationship with David over the years, which obviously had a lot of peaks and valleys, is it fair to say that that was the most profound personal relationship you'd ever had?
I would say it's the deepest personal relationship that I ever had between my teens and about 1990 when I finally broke off with her.
Right. In terms of you and David, how do you think that you two are most alike?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Over many years, we shared great many days.
Right.
And it's not clear to me to what extent this was simple imitation of me on his part. And if it was simple imitation on his part, you can really call it similarity.
Right.
But there's some similarity part in that.
So I feel like there's a little bit of the 3 peacocking going on here from his 3 fix, that he is kind of putting his brother down, and it's coming from that image center place. Well, like, my brother was similar to me because he was imitating me. But he's not like me. He's not as good as me.
I think we're both basically quiet, somewhat introverted types, both a little on the shy side. Another similarity between us.
And there's a lot of 9 positive reframing going on, both a little on the shy side. Like, dude, you were a recluse. You were like holed up in a cabin in Montana for years, and then like ragey when modern society was invading on your space. You were not a little bit shy. So this is so 9 core right here. Not 9 core literally, but 9.
Would be that generally speaking, he's a very adamant person.
You wrote that his adulation of you disgusted you at certain points over the course of your relationship. Yeah. Did you try to communicate that to him? Did you say to him, Dave, this is not a healthy way to be. I'm glad you like me.
Yeah.
I'm glad you respect me, but be your own person. Did you ever try to have that kind of conversation with him?
No.
Why not?
Because he's 9 fixed. But okay, so that could potentially speak to 3-wing 4 and heart, that he perceived that, and that's really natural, normal stuff, like a younger brother looking up to and emulating his older brother. But he found it disgusting and repulsive to him, which I think speaks to the competitive nature of 3, which we already saw, plus the 4 just feeling like disgusted and like repulsed and like violated in some sense if you feel like someone is copying you.
I mean, and it would have been very painful to have me say that, and it probably wouldn't have done any good. Yeah. And I mean,
so more 9 stuff popping out, it probably wouldn't have done any good. Like 9 is just like, oh, is it worth getting into a conflict if it's not going to help, It's avoidance.
I could, in one way or another, he would appear to be overvaluing me, but it wasn't something that was so explicit that I'd be sure that it was really that.
Right. In your dreams, literally in your dreams and in your thinking, it sounds as you really felt protective of David for many, many years, yes?
Yeah.
Do you think at some point that he ever began to feel protective of you? Do you think that as he moved into adulthood, especially after you had cut off communication, do you think that he ever began to feel protective of you? No, you don't. In what ways, if any, do you think he was jealous of you?
He's probably jealous of the fact that I got more attention for our parents. He was jealous of the fact that simply that I was dominant in our relationship.
He was dominant, which is again like the three, but also double competency. And he did seem to be like asserting and even having like a mean streak that was mentioned early on towards his little brother, like I am superior. And but kind of just like in this really insecure way. Um,
Jealous of the fact that I was smarter than he was. I could do most things better than he could. Athletics
I mean, come on, dude, you're smarter than everybody.
are one exception.
In what ways, if any, were you jealous of Dave?
Wow, he's gonna struggle here. Notice like his criticisms of his brother are so ready to go. And even the way he speaks, it has this like very like cagey, rapid, like head center, concentrated head center energy.
The only way I could think that I might have been somewhat jealous of him was that when he was in high school, he always had lots of friends. He was socially successful, and I wasn't. And I may have had some jealousy about that. Yeah, I don't clearly remember that.
I may have had some jealousy. I don't really clearly remember though. So there's like the nine, more nine just being vague and not super located about something he doesn't want to talk about. And then like this ego defense coming from three because this was a core wound for him. Feeling rejected by society and like there's no getting around that. And his brother was normal. So it's like he almost had to emphasize what made him special, to try to mitigate that woundedness of never ever really being accepted.
What do you regret most in retrospect about your relationship with David, about the way the relationship devolved, I guess?
Well, I say basically that I didn't break off with him 20 years earlier. I mean, he was certainly alienated from the mainstream system of values. He just particularly hated Reagan and that whole political bite. And yet,
Okay, so more points for Five Wing 6 over Five Wing 4 is that he is able to clearly communicate, like, and I don't want to say like if someone who's Five Wing 4 wouldn't, but they would have their, they would be much less located, and that's triple withdrawn. I mean, sorry, double withdrawn, double hexad. No attachment there. They're not gonna spell it out for you. Like you might get artwork or cryptic songs or images from them illustrating what they're thinking or feeling. But this guy was very articulate. He was very clear, other than the thick accent, you know.
I wouldn't say exactly and sympathy for Hinckley or for radicals generally. And there was resentment there, and yet there was never any hope or ambition on his part to actually do anything active or take radical measures.
What do you regret most in retrospect about your relationship with David, about the way the relationship
And I think you could even say that speaks to hexad and rejection, that he was like, for David to be close to me, he has to get on board with what I'm doing. And also, like, I believe his 9 fix has an 8 wing, so there would be like an extra dose of like that, like power rejection. It's my way or the highway, David. You're not radical enough. You're weak.
devolved, I guess?
Well, I say basically that I didn't break off with him 20 years earlier.
So you still feel that way?
Yeah, I mean,
That's rejection, like hardcore.
I mean, I got a lot of satisfaction out of corresponding with him. I mean, it was a good relation. It was in many respects, not in all respects, but in many respects, a positive from my point of view.
Right.
But I don't think it was from my brother's point of view.
These subtitles are so bad, they are not helping.
And in the end, it turned out to be disastrous from my point of view, as you can see.
Right. What do you think would have changed in his life if you had broken off earlier?
Well, I mean, let me put it this way. I think that his sense of rivalry with Big Brother, his attempt to equal Big Brother and to win Big Brother's approval with very limited success, I think all this was very hard on him. I think that his self-esteem would have been in much better shape if he hadn't had me to compete with his parents with. And I think he would have, and he always get at least tiny friends who would have had close relations.
Okay, so I think that's 3 and 4 because he's saying that if he hadn't been in relationship with his brother would have felt better about himself and had better self-esteem because he wouldn't have to compare himself to Ted's like magnificence.
Relationships with other people, so he didn't really need that relationship with me.
Right. If the roles had been reversed, if you had suspected David of being the Unabomber, right? After all the years that you haven't been communicating very regularly, what would you have done?
I would kept it to myself.
Is that what you feel he should have done?
Yeah.
And what was your reaction to that when you first hear that David is involved in turning you in? What does that feel like?
Well, obviously I resented it. There was another strain to my feeling.
So right here, I think you could also say that you're asking a 5 to give a like heart-centered response, like where were you like emotionally when you were betrayed by your brother? And he's struggling.
Feelings there. I don't know if I can explain it properly, but in a way, I was almost glad because my own brother turning me in a sense, made fun.
How so?
Well, I mean, it's
that you had eluded everyone but someone who knew you
Well, I didn't say I eluded anyone for anything. I mean,
right.
I pled guilty, but that was because I was forced to do so. But it was that, I mean, if someone, if A screws B, then it tends to make B look good, even if otherwise it might not look so good.
So like right now he's even like separating it from himself because like I feel like he's so unwilling to just access probably his raw emotions, and he probably wouldn't have even been aware that we can never really know his true intentions, but I think why he was doing what he was doing was from a place of hurt and like the rejection wounds. But he has to like use an analogy to bring this outside of himself to like depersonalize it, which I think speaks to like the trouble that people of this tri-type 593s can have with accessing their emotions because there's like, especially the core fives, they're so in their head.
Right.
So maybe that was perhaps an ignoble part, but that thought was trust, man.
Okay.
I'm not depressed or downcast. Let me see it.
As the 9 reframing.
Let's see if I can explain this. There's sort of different levels of how you feel about your life. Let me try to explain it this way.
And he's even like trying to like turn this into like an illustration, like a SoSp like teaching moment, which is very depersonalized and separate from himself and his own heart.
When I was living in the woods, there was sort of an undertone, underlying feeling that things were basically right with my life. That is, something might go wrong. I might have a bad day. I might screw something up. I might break my axe handle and do something else. Everything would go wrong, but still somehow underneath superficial unhappiness or bad feelings. There was the underlying feeling that my life was right. It was able to fall back on the fact that here I was, a free man in the mountains, surrounded by forests and wild animals and so forth. And this made my life right, even if things were, for the time being, going badly. Here it's the other way around. I'm not depressed or downcast, and I had things to do that I consider productive, like working on getting this book out.
Double competency.
And yet the knowledge that I locked up here and likely to remain so for the rest of my life is it ruins it. It's the undertone in this case is an extremely bad one, and I don't want to live long. I would rather get the death penalty and spend the rest of my life in prison.
Would you take your own life, given the opportunity?
I will not comment on that.
Okay.
I mean, at a superficial level, it isn't really that bad.
Right.
Just the knowledge that I'm locked up and I'm not free, sort of, it's just not a life worth living.
Right. What do you say if you have a retrial and
that's arguably true, especially for him with his focus on like rugged individualism and self-reliance. Like a lot of his critique in his manifesto was on society, like becoming like liberal and weak, overly reliant on technology and the government with technology would use against them, weaponize to enslave them. So him being institutionalized, especially as like a core rejection type, would probably honestly be worse than the death sentence.
are acquitted and have your life back, what do you say to society to relax them, to not let them worry about the Unabomber is at large?
Well, I don't know that I would have to advise them to let them alone.
Okay. If David were to come visit you, if David's in the room now, what do you want to say to him?
No, I actually wouldn't talk. I always turned my back and wouldn't talk to him.
Yeah. Do you still love him?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so now I'm curious because I think that he might have died by suicide. We'll just look it up quick. Okay. Yeah, he did die by suicide, which again, you could say is like another rejection move. Hanging himself using a shoelace. Okay, so he was really sick and probably going to pass away. Anyways, but I thought we could look a little at this like recap of his manifesto because this was like his swan song, right? This is what it was all about. It was written in 1995. Yeah, just kind of like what I was already going over. He wanted to protect wilderness because he probably personally saw it as his sanctuary from society. It's like a double withdrawn type with a lot of trauma. And then in that kind of like head center way, well, specifically 5-wing-6, he latched onto this ideology and like made it his everything. So we give up a piece of ourselves whenever we adjust to conform to society's standards and we are too plugged in. We're letting technology take over our lives willingly. So this piece about his criticism, we're giving up pieces of ourselves whenever we adjust to conform society standards. That definitely speaks to like core hexad, core rejection, head type stuff. So, I mean, people are still reading it today. I don't necessarily view him as like an evil man. And I've wondered like, how would his life have turned out if he hadn't been recruited into that MK Ultra study as such a young man? He was only 16. What if he had never been like identified as like, highly gifted and he had just been able to live a normal life? He might have made significant contributions to society, and that would have been his legacy and not this. So yeah, and he thought that there had to be like this extreme upheaval to facilitate the massive overhaul that he thought that society needed. So he was trying to save mankind through this way. So you could say that his motives weren't necessarily evil. It was just kind of like amoral. Like as a 5'9" he wouldn't have had much superego influence on his type. He would have just been like a type that was primed to be just like pure, like head energy or like SOSP. Just it's all about my ideology. That's the only thing that matters. He probably wouldn't have put a whole lot of weight. And I'm not saying 5'9" are like all like this. Obviously, this man had stuff going on that exacerbated his underlying type structure. But the only super ego influence he would have had would have been from that six wing. But I think to satisfy that little bit of super ego, he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought he was going to save humanity. So, yeah, and I thought we could also look. Yeah, I went to ChatGPT to pull this up, but I was curious about. And the FBI was trying to find this dude for like almost 20 years. This is the psychological profile they generated for him. Of course, it's a white male, right? Almost always is. Well-educated, introverted, reclusive, double withdrawn, socially awkward, 5'6", limited relationship. Yep, living alone, intelligent and meticulous, core 5'6", with double competency. Bombs are handcrafted, intricate, often disguised. Obsessive, methodical, impatient. 5'6". Resentful and angry towards authority. I think you could even argue right there, that's a little bit of that six wing. Almost like that counterphobic thing of like, you guys hurt me and I need to right this wrong. So I think that's where the superego from the six wing was going. Rigid belief system. Yeah, just head type stuff. Um, Especially in that five wing six space. Like a five is not gonna obviously do like the doubting and the ping-ponging thing. They're just gonna like keep burrowing in. Paranoid, yes, he was, and we know that. Very knowledgeable, rural and isolated. Writing suggested a desire for recognition and a need to be understood. I think that could be the SO instinct coming through. And the desire for recognition, I mean, you could very like, this is like stereotypical, you could tie that to his three wing and maybe even three wing four. Style of communication was formal and academic. Yeah, brainy head type, 5'6" space. Obviously isolated, schizoid. Um, yeah. So I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to listen to. I think I pulled up the manifesto, but maybe not. All right, anyways, that's probably enough to wrap it up. So Big Ted Kaczynski, RIP, 5 wing 6, 9 wing 8, and 3 wing 4, probably. And for sure, SOSP. Guys, thank you for joining me. If you agree, if you found this helpful, or if you disagree and want to fight me on it, please leave a comment or share. Why not?